Good morning.
Good morning.
I learned this morning that I've skipped a part of the evolutionary process, and I still enjoy receiving sometimes, Chris. I hate to admit it. The face of Jesus for years, almost for as long as Christianity has been around, people have tried to make depictions of Jesus. Who Jesus is, what did Jesus look like? And it's been pretty fascinating. I started doing some research. This is actually one of the very first depictions of Jesus that we have. And this one's called The Good Shepherd. It's from the 3rd century, so in the year 200, so about 150 years, give or take, after the time of Jesus. You can find this depiction in a catacomb. And it's actually formatted after a motif that had been around for nearly 800 years before this was formed. And you start to see that when people begin to think about what Jesus looked like, it was less about what his face looked like and more about what he was doing. Or you can't really make out very good facial features on this, but you can tell he's carrying a lamb. He's caring for his sheep. And of course, this was found in a catacomb. As is this one, is Christ between Peter and Paul. You have some other disciples there at the bottom, but Jesus is placed in between Peter and Paul, and this is also found in a catacomb around the 4th century, so in the years 300. We have this one, another one from, you guessed it, a catacomb from the 5th century. Now it appears we've got some real artists working. From the 5th century, this is from a mausoleum at I have this written down because I don't know much about art, Gala Basilica, from the 5th century also. And again, you can tell Jesus is caring for sheep, and you can start to make out more of those facial features. What did Jesus look like? This seems to be something we are constantly fascinated with. What did Jesus look like? We have the Shroud of Turin. I don't know if you've seen this in the news recently. They've done some more studies. They will not stop studying this artifact. I don't know what it is about it, but they won't stop studying it. People believe that this is the clothing that covered Jesus, and the impression was left there because he passed through the clothing and left his facial impressions on the clothing. The latest studies have shown that this is probably a piece of cloth that was laid over top of a sculpture, and the sculpture left the impressions, but for whatever reason, people want this to be what Jesus looked like. We're fascinated with what Jesus looked like. This is Christ Pantocrator, if I'm saying that right. Means Christ over all power and all authority. This is what this painting is called. And you can tell by this time, and this is the 6th century, you've got some really good details as to what the face of Jesus looked like. But we're not done. Have you seen this one in the news? This one's a little bit older. This one was done by DNA samplings of the people of the time in the area where Jesus lived and what the typical person might look like from that area. And you might be wondering, why is Rob going on and on and on about the face of Jesus and all these depictions? Don't worry, we'll get there. I don't know if you'll like it, but we will get there. Let's say this is what Jesus probably looked like. Now, this is not an attempt to say this is what Jesus exactly looked like, but for a Jewish person in the 1st century, this would be a very common looking person. And when you look at this picture and you imagine Jesus preaching, how would you receive his teachings if he looks like this? We're very impressionable people. We're often carried away by the way someone looks. We're very influenced by the way someone looks, by the way they dress, by how they do their hair, if they have hair to do. But Jesus actually tells us exactly what he looks like. Maybe people don't realize this. Jesus tells us in Scripture exactly what he looks like. And if you want to seek the face of Jesus, Jesus tells you exactly where to look and how he looks. Did you know that? No. Well, let's take a look, shall we? Yes. Matthew 25, the sheep and the goats. And it is in this parable, it's in this teaching that Jesus tells us, this is what I look like. Over the past several weeks, and I would say probably over the past several years, I have been trying to dig down deep into what it means to be a Christian, to what it means to be someone that says, I follow Jesus. And Jesus will tell us in Matthew chapter 25 what it means to follow him. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people from one another as a shepherd separates sheep from goats. And you have to kind of understand, at a time, there was the thought that there were certain nations that were in and certain nations that were out. And so there's this buildup, this picture of certain nations will be in, or probably certain nation will be in, and all the other nations will be left out. It says the Son of Man begins to separate as a shepherd separates sheep from goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. The king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. It's interesting to note that in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus starts by telling us who's blessed, and at the end of Matthew, he tells us who is blessed. The Beatitudes, blessed are you who are poor in spirit. He ends with, come, you who are blessed by the Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a foreigner, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. You have to remember the picture that Jesus has here. The Son of Man, the King of the world, is coming. He's separated all the nations, and he's telling them, you are righteous because you saw me hungry. You saw me thirsty. You saw me naked. You saw me as a foreigner. You saw me in prison, and you met my needs. You can imagine what their next question is going to be. When did we ever see the King of the world in any of these circumstances? When? Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did this happen? We're looking at you. We never seen you in this state. I've never seen you hungry or thirsty. Never seen it. When did we see you, a foreigner, and invite you in? Or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? They are confused by the statement of the Son of Man. Because they're saying, Jesus, we never, ever saw you in any condition like this. And yet you're telling us we are the righteous because we did these things. When did we do these things for you? The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. But remember, there are some goats too. Then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels." Why? He doesn't say, because you didn't believe in the Trinitarian doctrine as we sang about. Is it all because you clapped your hands at a church service, or you had an instrument at a church service? He doesn't go into the technicalities of what happens inside of the walls of a church building. He goes into what we do with our lives, the way that we've been called to live and who we've been called to serve and to help. He says, "For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a foreigner, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me." They will also answer, the same as the sheep, "When? Lord, when did we see you hungry, or thirsty, or a stranger, or needing clothes, or sick, or in prison, and did not help you? If we had seen you, the King, in any circumstance like that, we certainly would have helped you." If we had seen the King on the side of the road, beaten, we would have helped you. Because we would have known who you are. We would have recognized you. And we would have said, "We're here to help and serve you." But he will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. What does Jesus look like? He looks like somebody that needs something. We have all these artistic depictions of what Jesus looks like, but Jesus tells us, this is what I look like. I look like the person that's in need. I look like the person that's struggling through something. I look like the person whose wife just left him or whose husband's just left him. I look like the person whose family member just died. I look like someone who is sick. I look like someone that's been put in prison. I look like someone who is naked and thirsty and hungry. That's what I look like. And when you refuse to serve them, you are refusing to serve me. That is what Jesus looks like. It doesn't matter what his facial features are. How long his hair is, I know some people have a problem with it, but how long his hair is or how short his hair is. How tall he was or how short he was. Was he stocky or skinny? It doesn't really, none of that matters. Because Jesus tells us, if you want to know what I look like, then take a look around. Take a look around at the people here. Take a look around at our communities, our neighborhoods, and find the people who are in need and help them. Because when we refuse to help others, we refuse to help Jesus. Because that's what Jesus looks like. A couple chapters previous to chapter 25 was probably one of the most scathing, long commentary from Jesus, long discourse from Jesus against the Pharisees. Because they had all these things that they would do. He'd call them whitewashed tombs. He'd call them hypocrites. Because they're doing all the things on the outside that look good, but when you get on the inside, there's nothing there. Do you remember the story of the withered fig tree? You got to go a little bit back here. I preached on this. It was a while ago. I'm trying to put a bow on this whole thing, if that's possible. Remember, Jesus and his disciples are hungry and they see a fig tree on their way to the temple, and Jesus says, "Oh, a fig tree! It's in leaf, it looks great." But he puts his hand inside and there's no fruit. You remember the story. And Jesus says, "Curse this tree," which seemed a little extreme. Then Jesus goes to the temple. And he passes judgment on the temple. And they go back and they see the tree and they say, "Master, look, the tree you commanded to wither has died." We don't want to be a church that has just a whole lot of green leaves on the outside, but no fruit on the inside. Where everything looks great on the outside. Oh, the music sounds great. Everything is perfect. There's so many people and they're happy. I love all that. There's nothing wrong with having leaves on your tree. But there's got to be fruit in the tree. I want to have a leafy tree. But I want there to be fruit. And Jesus tells the Pharisees, they got a lot of leaves on their trees, but there's nothing inside but dead men's bones. And here you have sheep and goats, and you have them all sorts of wondering, why is the Son of Man talking to them about when he was in prison? It's because it's not about the leaves, it's about the fruit. It's about our care for one another. Christianity is a one another religion. And we're meant to help each other. We're meant to be there for one another. We're meant to serve each other and to serve the people around us. That's what we've been called to do. We've been called to pick up our cross and carry it every day. What does that mean? It means I am giving of myself every day for the sake of the people around me. My wife, my husband, my kids, you, and you for me, and you for your families, and you for your communities, and you for your neighbors. That's what Jesus looks like. That's who we're called to help. Do not be lured in to a Christianity that says, do this checklist and you'll be okay. That's tempting. It's so tempting because I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's easier. But Jesus calls us to this revolutionary way of life. This revolutionary way of living and being. It's not about a checklist. I mean, I know preachers say stuff like that. Oh, it's not about a checklist, but it's really not. There's a reason we say that all the time. Because it's really not. My prayer for this church is that we can be sincere. Kind of like what Art said, we're not trying to manufacture anything. It's grassroots. Sincere followers of Jesus. Where we know what it means. We know when we signed up, when we said, I will carry my cross every single day. We signed up for it and we know what it means. That's what Jesus looks like, and this is what Jesus is looking for. Youth 1050, if you want to follow Brandon out. For whatever reason, I can't seem to move on from this theme. And I don't know if it feels like from your perspective that I just keep saying the same thing all the time. Maybe that's true. Hey, on a day like today when it's hot outside, at least we have air conditioning. Listening to me in the air conditioning has got to be better than suffering in the heat. Maybe. But I can't break free from this. And maybe it's because growing up I didn't really feel like this was what was taught, and so I feel this compulsion to make sure that you were hearing it. But this is what Jesus went around preaching and teaching and living all the time. If you want to know what it means to live like Jesus, then we have to read the stories of Jesus and take to heart the teachings that he says. Last week's sermon on forgiveness, I kind of feel like that is one of the most overlooked parables Jesus ever preached, where he connects our forgiving of others to God's forgiving of us. Because that's what we've been called to do. To forgive one another from the heart. Remember, Peter was looking for a way out. He's looking for some other number other than maybe 7 is enough. And Jesus is like, 7 is nothing. Forgive each other. Matthew 25, help each other. We have this tendency to look at people who are in need and say, well, man, they're just lazy. I want to help that lazy person. When someone is in need, we help. It's what we do. Because Jesus is there in that person. I don't know how it all works. But Jesus says, when you help them, you help me. Remember what your life is about. And it can always be summed up in 2 things. Love God. How do I do that best? How do I love God best? Love the people around you. There's no better way to love God than to love the people around you. Because how can you say, I love God? You've never even seen God. But you have seen your neighbor. How can you say you love God whom you haven't seen and hate your brother whom you have seen? If you want to love God, love me. Love Art, love Chris, love CJ, love Sharon, love Connie. Love the people around you. That's how we love God. That's it.